pawn will Magnus Carlsen push? It's the queen's pawn, the D pawn, and Wesley reacts instantly by bringing his knight out. Much more classical stuff. Magnus might have lost his last opportunity to play 1b3 on the Champions Chess Tour this season with white. But here we go, one of the main lines of the Queen's Gambit, the Berlin of 1d4 as we call it, where often queens get traded off very early. Magnus Carlsen defeated Fabiano Caruana in this opening just a couple of days ago, but this time he pushes his knight to the more normal square, not the central square that he used against Fabiano. And this is a very well-known position, Robert.
Yeah, for here, Wesley so brings his bishop out. White can take this bishop on e6 at any moment, but first, Magnus goes bishop d2, and to my eyes, that's a bit of an odd move because white wants to castle the king towards the queen side and get a rook check along the d-file, but that bishop will block the rook's path. So bishop d2, a very interesting move here, just kind of throwing a curveball at Wesley.
Yeah, again, it feels like one of those openings, Magnus Carlsen. He's just testing the opponent. This is modern chess. Often the top players, they study these types of openings, these forcing lines with queens coming off, center opening. They study them for tens of hours, hundreds of hours even, and often they know everything under the sun in the main lines. But if you test them with these small ideas, these odd-looking ideas, white's bishop on a really passive square, then actually the opponents do have scope to go wrong. That's what happened when Magnus met Fabiano a few days ago, and look at that, Wesley just peering off at the opponent. How much does Magnus know? Wesley has got to assume he's walking into some preparation, so just surviving these next few moves will be step one for Wesley So.
First question on the board by Magnus Carlsen as he plays a non-standard move in this position. Definitely an opening that Wesley knows so well, is so familiar with, but yet it makes him pause and burn some time on the clock. It's all about finding the right setup for your pieces here with black. And also, we shouldn't be fooled by the queens being traded off. This isn't Magnus being non-ambitious or just going into an Armageddon. He wants to try to grind down this endgame. He's going to play this out till the very end.
It's a really clever move, actually. If we dive into the specifics a bit, it does take away one of black's key resources with the dark square bishop, and the threat, if you want to call it that, or at least the idea of knight takes bishop from white taking this bishop near the black king side, that's not out of the question either. So he just plays a tricky move order. Wesley develops his knight. The e4 pawn can be grabbed. The white king can castle queenside if he wants, but he first takes this pawn e4, and he has equalized the material, but Magnus still has the right to castle, while Wesley does not.
Yeah, that black king could come under heavy fire. Yes, the queens are off. There's not going to be direct checkmate attacks. But if you imagine white castling, the white rooks centralizing, black's king will be caught in no man's land. So right now, it's looking very, very level. It's just the lack of castling rights for black. But there is also a bit of a threat of white's knight going back where it came from. If white's ever able to trade off white's knight for black's light squared bishop, a long-term advantage. It's all about the bishop pair here, symmetrical pawn structure, just as we saw pretty much in the previous game. This one, risk of it fizzling out, but only if Wesley is accurate. It's definitely onus on black here to defend this one. Magnus, he's trying to play for two results. He's trying to take all risk out while massaging a small but stable long-term advantage.
And we might see Wesley on the next move fighting that very threat that David, you pointed out too. He does reach for the h-pawn, so keeping control of the g5 square. Now there's no more knight jumping, trying to grab that bishop pair, which in this position, especially being so open with pawns on both sides, will really count for something. So with knight g5 out of the question now, it's time for Magnus to decide where does he want to place his king. If you go castling on the queen's side, you have to calculate lines of giving up the a2 pawn. But Magnus also has the idea that he can just continue with development, and it still feels he'll be the one to control the central lines first. Take out that bishop, castle on the king side, looks like the safer option to me.
And both of his bishops can get to the longest diagonal. So his bishop on d2, the dark square bishop, it can just go one square to the left-hand side, that way, and go to c3 on the long diagonal. The light square bishop can step in front of the king right now, and then also go to f3. So both of his bishops will be on good squares, and I think he should delay his decision of where to castle, keep Wesley on his toes, so that Wesley doesn't know which side of the board to focus on.
Yeah, Wesley really shouldn't even relax too soon in this game, because these positions are deceptive. I've been on the wrong end against these top grandmasters. Magnus has ground me down multiple times. These top players, they always look for resources.